Today, we're transforming the frame of our shortened 1966 Chevy C-10 by first having it media blasted and then powder coated. After that, we're back in the shop to put on an airbag suspension so we can get it rolling in the weeds. That's all today here on Trucks.
Hey, welcome to Trucks. Well, today we're going to take you guys to two really cool places while we have the frame of our 66 Chevy C-10 prepped and coated. And I'm here at Strip Masters in Nashville.
While I'm here at POWERNATION. And we're going to give you guys an inside look at both of these shops. And as soon as Kevin is done having the frame media blasted, he's going to send it right here for us to have it powder coated for a great looking and durable finish.
Well, here's our C-10 frame, and it's obvious that we've done a prior surgery right here, and if you remember, there's been a total of 20 inches of length removed from it. Our C-10 Project Daily Driver truck started out life as a long bed version, which was easier to find in better condition for less money, but we still wanted the short wheelbase for its sportier looks.
So we blew the truck apart, sectioned 12 inches under the cab using a staggered Z-cut for better weld strength and a fish plate for added rigidity. After lobbing off another 8 inches off the back, we focused on the body.
But instead of sectioning from the center like the frame, we took 12 inches at the leading edge and 8 inches at the end of the outer panel. And MIG welded everything back up to make a factory-looking short wheelbase bed. There you go. So with the help of Ed Gale, president of Strip Masters, we got the frame unloaded and into the media booth. We had the chance to catch up with Ed and talk to him a little bit about the different approach that Strip Masters has for taking parts down to the bare steel.
We use 3 different methods. We use dry ice, we use soda, the regular baking soda, both of which are, you can eat the soda, and we also use plastic media, which is recyclable and very environmentally friendly.
Ed's son Matt first grounds the frame and then starts blasting the surface with urea formaldehyde or plastic media, which strips off the paint but doesn't disturb the base metal.
The surface does not get roughened up, or as I guess they call it in the industry, profiled. We don't profile the surface. We leave it pretty much as it was originally, and whatever you see there is what happened before us.
Blasting like this makes for a lot less work after you get your parts back, since Strip Masters carefully chooses which media works best.
Each of them has a unique requirement, and so unlike the carpenter that's got just a hammer in his toolbox, we have several different tools and we can select the one we think is best for the application.
Ed also showed us their soda blasting capabilities on this soda can. It's abrasive enough to remove the anodized label without getting into the soft aluminum base metal. Now they blasted their way literally through this frame in about an hour, and their average turnaround time is surprisingly short.
Well, generally within a day or two.
Well, there it is. This frame is perfectly clean, and now it's ready for powder. So let's get this thing over to Ryan.
Now obviously, they did a great job media blasting this frame. After we get it unloaded, a quick steam cleaning and final inspection, this thing ought to be ready for powder. What the steam does is remove any grease or oily contamination from the surface, but it's not just hot water. Powder X uses an iron phosphate solution that acts as a conversion coating, transforming any surface rust into something that can be powder coated. We talked with Joey Golliver, the operations manager here, who gave us a little history on Powder X. Joey also shared with us the importance of proper surface prep.
Prep work with powder coating is tenfold more important than it is with liquid. The heat does not forgive for any contaminants that are on it.
After the frame was blown dry, we moved it into the application booth for powder. The first step in powder coat application is always proper grounding of the part, since an electrostatic connection is what makes powder transfer possible. The coating will be a total of about 3 mils thick and will take on a velvety appearance. Now we've got Powder X equipment at our shop, but this frame is just too large for our oven. But that's not an issue at Powder X's facility.
The biggest object we can handle here is up to about 8 foot wide, 8 foot tall, and 25 foot long. And we have systems throughout the United States that we've put in that can do parts up to maybe 80 foot.
Powder technology is growing about as fast as the rest of the coatings industry, and today almost anything can be coated.
The weirdest thing we actually powder coated was a steer skull that one of our students brought from Arkansas. We actually coated horns and all.
After powder is applied, our frame gets rolled into the heated oven and brought up to 400 degrees over about 10 to 15 minutes.
cure it for probably about 20 minutes metal temperature, which is very important. Most people forget that it's metal temp. You actually have to get the metal to temperature, so this will probably take about 40-45 minutes cure time in order to get it up, because we do not want to undercure the powder.
After heating and curing, the frame is carefully rolled out of the booth and allowed to cool. Well, there you go. This thing's just about ready to load onto the trailer. Once it's cool enough to touch, that is. And that's the neat thing about powder coating. You don't have to wait for days for everything to cure. Once it's cool enough to handle, you're ready to go. Nothing else to wait for. I'll get this thing loaded up. See you guys back at the shop.
When we come back, we'll start our install by bagging the front half of our newly prepped chassis. Stay tuned.
Hey, welcome back to the shop. If you're just joining us, we had the frame of our '66 Chevy C-10 media blasted and then powder coated in this great looking semi-gloss finish. That'll be chip resistant and it'll stay looking this good for years and years.
Now, if you're wondering what it's going to take to get your frame done like this, well, between the media blaster and the powder coater, you're going to have about $500 to $600 wrapped up in it. Now, powder's not the only way to go. You can have your frame media blasted and then come back with a paint system. But even the most expensive urethane paint system is still not going to match the durability of powder.
Now, obviously, this is the old suspension. We ripped off the frame before we had it blasted. And now it's time to start putting the chassis back together to create a foundation for the rest of the truck. We're sticking with the retro style theme throughout this entire project with some modern technology thrown in the mix, something you car guys know as resto mod. So we're going with a suspension system that'll give us the ride height we want, will handle well, and won't beat us up as we cruise down the road. So we looked around to see what would work for us with the goals we set, and we found this strong arm system from Air Ride Technologies that completely replaces the OE setup. Comes with new upper and lower control arms, airbags, 2.5-inch drop spindles, a front sway bar with solid end links that replaces the less than ideal factory setup, and front shocks that are adjustable for both rebound and compression so you can dial in the ride you're after. Now, for you guys that don't want to go with air, you can still upgrade to a little bit more modern setup. And we picked up this front clip out of a '72 C-10 from a junkyard along with our 12-bolt rear end. And most of this is a direct swap with very little modification. It'll give you a disc brake setup, complete with power steering. But one of the best upgrades is going from the old 6-lug to the much more common 5-lug pattern. It'll give us an almost unlimited choice when it comes to picking out a set of custom wheels.
The back half of the system features these beefy 2-inch DOM trailing arms with an adjusted rear axle pinion angle to allow for a lowered ride height. The system comes with air springs, adjustable shocks, front and rear cross members and panhard bar, and this billet aluminum panhard bar bracket that bolts to the axle housing. We also have C-notches that are going to allow us another couple inches of drop from stock. This system's well engineered, bolts right in, so right now we're going to focus on building up that front end. Now, since our frame is pretty much stripped down, this install will be easy, but we still need to remove the stock shock tabs. Using the new shock mounts that Air Ride provides as a template, mark and drill the 4 holes into the frame rails, then bolt them in. The upper bag mount gets bolted into the existing cross member, again using it as its own template for bolt locations. Now, you'll need to drill a hole here with a 9/32 bit to route your airline later. Next, you'll mount the air spring to the mounting plate before bolting the plate in.
The lower arms get mounted using the factory U-bolts that we cleaned up and painted black. Now, you're going to want to install the shocks before the upper arms and spindles, and then connect them to the lower arms. This will make it easier to put the knuckle assemblies where they belong.
Now's the time to bolt the lower A arm to the air spring using the provided hardware. The upper arms bolt into place right where the factory arms used to sit. Now, if your truck had a decent alignment before you tore it down, you can reinstall the factory alignment shims to get you in the ballpark. But we're starting completely fresh, so we'll align everything later on.
The drop spindles get set onto the ball joints, and the castle nuts are loosely installed.
Get used to grinding factory rivets with this system. And here's a good way to remove them. Cut grooves into the round head, then hit it with an air hammer and chisel bit. They come out like butter. The strap for the sway bar uses the hole for the factory rivet we just removed as a locator. And the other hole gets drilled out, just like the rest, with a 1/8 inch pilot hole, followed by a 3/8 inch drill bit. And then the new sway bar gets mounted using new urethane bushings.
Finally, the solid end links connect the lower arms to the sway bar, and that just about wraps up the front part of this strong arm system.
Up next, we'll finish the back half of our chassis, and then later, it's a wheel and tire upgrade, but with a classic look.
Hey, welcome back to Trucks. Well, sometimes you got to take a step back in order to make some progress. So we're cleaning up the frame of our 66 Chevy C-10 pickup, getting rid of some cross members and mounts in order to make room for a new suspension system out back.
We're using Air Ride Technology's strong arm system, front and rear. Up front, we've got everything but the brakes installed. But the good news here is that these 2.5 inch drop spindles accept all the stock hardware. So we can roll with the brakes, tie rods, and power steering box off our Junkyard 72 front frame clip.
Now we've had to drill out about 30 of the factory rivets, and we've also drilled out the corners of our C-notch relief. Once we've got this cut out, the C-notch just saddles the rail and it'll bolt right in.
Using a 4-inch cutoff wheel makes easy work of notching the frame. And the pilot holes in the corners not only look better, but make the frame a tad stronger since there's no sharp corner that could potentially crack under chassis flex. With the frame notched, the strong arm C-notches get nudged into place with a soft-faced hammer. All the new mounting bolts are provided in the kit and get finger tightened before anything is tightened up for good. You're not done drilling yet. The airline relief is cut using a 1/2 inch hole saw drilled into the bottom plate of the C-notch, which also serves as the lower bag mount.
Before we had our frame blasted, we went ahead and removed the factory center cross member, since we knew this one came with the kit.
The upper shock mount tube gets placed between the C-notches, and the new round tube trailing arms gets bolted into the cross member.
Now we can set our 12-bolt 5-lug rear axle onto the trailing arm mounts and bolt it in using new grade 8 U-bolts.
Now we're using our crane, since it's here, but a floor jack will lift the rear axle up into the C-notch so the bags can be bolted in.
First, you can mount your shocks in place, followed by the panhard bar mount on the back of the axle housing, and the panhard bar, and finally the rear air springs get mounted between the lower arms and the C-notches. That looks great.
After the break, we'll let the air out of the bags. Stick around.
Hey, welcome back to Trucks. Well, the chassis of our 66 C-10 is looking great with fresh powder coat and this strong arm suspension system we picked up from Air Ride Technologies. And no, your eyes are not deceiving you. The last time you saw this rear axle, it was still in bare steel, fresh from the media blasters. And the reason we didn't powder coat it at the same time as the frame is the 400 degrees that it takes to flow out the powder would have melted the seals and heated up the oil and caused contamination that would fall back into the powder, ruining the powder job. So we just brushed on a coat of POR 15 that we also picked up at Strip Masters.
Now we told you before that the drop spindles from Air Ride will accept all the stock brake hardware. So we picked up a new set of 5-on-5 lug rotors that our local O'Reilly's had in stock, along with a fresh set of bearings and some new seals. And that gets us ready for new wheels and tires. Now we talked about the direction we want to take this truck. Classic styling with a modern twist. And after looking around for the right set of wheels, we decided on these made by Wheel Antiques that we picked up through Summit Racing. They're 17 by 8 inch painted steel rallies with a 4.5 inch back spacing. The tires are from Tire Rack and they're 265/55 17s. They've got a great looking tread pattern, black wall styling, and a tall enough sidewall that'll give us a great balance in between ride and handling. This is one good looking rolling chassis, but we can't show you the complete system because the compressor, tanks, valves, and controller will all come later on in this project. But what we can show you is this 72 C-10 that has the exact same strong arm setup.
The controller is easy to read and easier to use. They've got theirs mounted right here on a bracket below the heater controls. It gives you independent control over all 4 corners, several different presets if you want a cruising height or a laid out height for shows. But the best thing about this system is how much drop it gives you for a bolt-in system with a mild C-notch.
Those tires and wheels tuck right up in there.
I can't wait to see our truck like this.
This thing looks sweet.
If you've turned wrenches long enough or worked on vehicles old enough, well, chances are you've run across a couple of broken bolts from time to time. There's a couple of different ways to deal with that. Left-hand drills, ease-out kits, but there's no guarantees that you're not going to mess up the original threads trying to get that bolt out. Well, BrokenBolt.com has come up with this patented fixture that guarantees you a straight shot right to the center of the bolt and the ability to remove any broken bolt quickly without damaging threads. And even though they provide a tap with the kit, about 75% of the time, all you got to do to clean the threads out is blow them out with compressed air. This is the commercial kit, similar to the ones used by the U.S. military, and comes with a great instruction manual and standard and metric sizes ranging from 1/4 inch to 7/16 and 6mm to 10mm, both coarse and fine threads. These sets are 100% American made, and you can pick one up from BrokenBolt.com for about $650. So if failure is not an option, take a cue from our boys overseas and check one of these systems out.
Now, you probably noticed we didn't install brake calipers when we threw rotors on the front end of our C-10. That's because we wanted to show you how to rebuild one. Now, GM calipers, they're readily available, new or reman, but if you drive a truck that's not so common, a rebuild might be your only option. So if you've got 15 minutes and a few dollars for a kit, well, rebuilding your calipers might be easier than you think. Use a little compressed air to release the piston. Wipe the piston and the inside of the caliper to get rid of any excess fluid. You also want to clean out any debris or dirt if you see it. Using a scuffing pad, clean the piston and the piston bore. Our rebuild kit comes from O'Reilly Auto Parts and includes a new O-ring that gets dropped in and lubed with a little fresh brake fluid. Now, using a C-clamp, you can press the piston back in the bore. And finally, install the new dust boot with a dull, flat screwdriver or a drift. Well, that's about all there is to it. Now all this thing needs is some paint. Thanks for watching Trucks. See you guys next week.